Hi there. I hope you're having a nice weekend and welcome to this extra episode where we're going to take a look at Esther's story. And I'm super grateful for anyone who shares their story in the comments or is a guest on the channel or writes a letter to us like Esther has. But today I'm extra grateful, and you'll see why. We'll see that uh, Esther found that she could sleep in circumstances where we think that would be all but impossible, and circumstances that also sometimes we think would make it all but impossible to find it in ourselves to uh, just share a hopeful and uplifting message to other people. And you'll see what I mean as we read through this message. But I'm extra grateful to you, Esther, for sharing this with the community and bringing hope and inspiration to everyone. So, without further ado, let's take a look at this email that came in about 3 weeks ago from Esther. Let's read it together. Hi, Daniel. You may remember me from the bedtime app back in the spring. I definitely do. I wanted to pop in and give you an update. Here's my story. I had 3 months of postpartum anxiety and insomnia in 2009, a traumatic, life-changing experience. And after that, managed occasional nights of bad sleep with contingent sleep meds. Fast forward to 2021 in June, when I began a CBT-I program to learn skills I could use instead of sleep meds. Ironically, this kicked off a horrendous new bout of insomnia. The therapist said I shouldn't use any sleep meds and didn't provide any cognitive support on the front end. Those lessons came later in the program. So, of course, I didn't sleep at all the first night, the first time that had happened in years. And that sent me into a horrible downward spiral just before moving to Germany with my family for 1 year. I tried all the things, every sleep medication known to humankind: meditation, yoga nidra, acupuncture, obsessively reading websites, reading success stories, watching videos, including sleep coach school videos, mindfulness, anxiety reduction classes and apps, etc. I already woke up and got up at the same time, didn't cancel events due to insomnia, kept up with my work, etc. So I knew that wasn't the problem. The anxiety about sleep was all consuming. With my therapist in Germany, I tried a traditional approach to CBT-I. However, I despised getting out of bed because it amped up my anxiety. I felt guilty when I caved and took sleep meds out of desperation. By the second week, I only averaged 3.75 hours of sleep. I was a mess. It felt like one of the lowest points in my life. Fast forward to now. I'm recently off sleep meds and getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep, sleeping even better than I was before June 2021. I don't have a magic formula, but there are a few things that have helped. First, I learned from several sources: Tracy Hannigan's sleep Facebook group, your YouTube videos and the app, Martin Reed's website, success stories, that hyper arousal was my fundamental problem, not lack of sleep drive, a negative association with my bed, or an irregular sleep schedule. Therefore, I needed to find ways to calm my nervous system. This was a revelation. It meant that sleep restriction and stimulus control were not the solution for me. Second, last fall, I happened to discover autogenic training, a type of self-hypnosis and biofeedback that's used by elite athletes, NASA scientists, etc. It's not woo-woo. The first time I listened to the audio video during the day, I fell asleep. That was a miracle, because at that point I could only sleep with meds and had so much anxiety I couldn't even nap. I began practicing this during the day and found I could fall asleep pretty consistently. I began listening to the video every night before bed and still do, not as a magic wand for falling asleep, but based on the notion that the best way to calm your mind is to calm your body, focus on your body, not your thoughts. During this time, I was reading and working with my therapist on ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness, and metacognitive approaches. I found these much more compelling than a traditional CBT approach where you challenge your thoughts. As an academic, I can argue any idea to death. Rather than engaging with my thoughts about sleep, I found it more useful to notice them and then work on letting them go and redirecting my attention. There's a great podcast about metacognitive approaches. The mind is a busy train station, and we don't have to board every train to catastrophe town. We can choose to let those trains go. I learned a lot about directing my attention and that I don't have to pursue every thought that enters my mind. By the winter and spring, I was no longer using sleep meds every night. However, I still used them when I couldn't fall asleep or woke up in the night. I got some support from Tracy Hannigan with digging into the underlying fear, the need for commitment to do hard things, and how continued use sets up an experiment where you're watching to see what happens. I ultimately realized that telling myself I'm not going to use sleep meds wasn't working. I felt guilty and bad about myself for caving. So around April, I began a slow tapering approach with mirtazapine, my sleep med. Eventually, I threw out the other backup sleep meds that I had on hand. This tapering decision ended up being crucial. From that point on, I only had a handful of rough nights to sleep. However, the last step of stopping the medication entirely was harder than I anticipated, and I realized I hadn't thought through it very well. I thought I would just go from 3.75 milligrams one week to nothing at all the next. During this spring, I was getting support from several places: Tracy Hannigan and her Facebook group, Bedtime for 1 month, and the Sleep Coach School's FB group, and an app, Dr. Guy Meadows' app. All of these reinforced that acceptance was crucial and that there was nothing wrong with lying in bed. I always knew that in my case, sleep restriction and stimulus control were BS. Getting out of bed made my insomnia worse, not better. By mid-June, I was in the process of deciding on a tapering approach for the final weeks. For example, choosing which nights per week to skip sleep meds and then increase the number for a couple of weeks until you stop. Then I was hit with a diagnosis of lung cancer that completely upended my life. I was 49 and one of the healthiest, fittest people around. I decided that getting off sleep meds was not my priority. So I just stayed on my tiny dose of mirtazapine, which I'm sure was a placebo effect. Believe it or not, I slept very well considering my diagnosis. Ironically, now that I have something real to worry about, it doesn't really affect my sleep. I even slept pretty well when I spent 7 days in a German hospital getting tests and biopsies and 3 hospitalization, 22 days, back in the US in August and September due to pulmonary embolisms and, for one hospitalization, COVID. For all but the most recent hospitalization, I increased my mirtazapine to 7.5 milligrams. Oddly, from a sleep perspective, my time in the hospital was reassuring because I saw that I could sleep even with an enormous oxygen tube in my nose, IVs in my arms, and interruptions from nurses throughout the night. A month or so ago, I reduced mirtazapine to 3.75 milligrams. Then I just decided I was ready to try sleeping without it. And guess what? I slept fine. I did take one dose when I was hospitalized again nearly 3 weeks ago, but since then I've been sleeping very well. I feel like I'm in a completely different place now with my sleep. I don't think or worry about it. I've had nights where I'm awake for an hour or two, but I eventually fall back asleep. I still use supplemental oxygen at night and sleep fine, even with a cannula in my nose. I hope my experience can provide some reassurance for people who are struggling. Insomnia is hell, but there is a way out. The hard thing is that each of us must chart our own path. I'm grateful that I found various groups to get support when I needed it the most. Esther. I'm so glad again that we have this to share, Esther, and thank you so much for providing hope and inspiration and support to the community here, especially when surely this must have been so difficult to learn of this diagnosis, Esther. So it means, again, so much, and I'm extra grateful for this. And there's so much we can learn from this. That the path is different from all of us, but the core teaching, whether you learn it from Tracy Hannigan or Guy Meadows or here, it all centers around acceptance. That when we're no longer trying to force sleep to happen or make it happen or control it, it happens by itself. And anytime we have a chance to see someone share a story of that, it again brings so much hope and clarity and inspiration. So Esther, I want to thank you so much. And for everyone tuning in here, I hope you found value here, and I hope you have a nice rest of your weekend, and look forward to having you back next week. Bye for now.